My first question to you is to you, Jalaj. Uh, it's more from an inspiration standpoint. You've I've seen one of your interviews that you draw a lot of deep connection to your grandfather's origins in Kappadwanj that inspired a philanthropic effort. How do you think his experience and values from those early days have shaped your approach towards giving back to community?
No, I think the whole concept of trusteeship, that you are here for a while and you have inherited or taken from the generations before, and it's your responsibility to pass it on to the generations hereafter. I think that's the underlying philosophy in Hinduism also. And I think that's what it is all about. So it's a transient presence we all have here, and whatever impact we can make during that can go a very long way. But in the end, we are just handing over or passing on the baton to the next generation or even the generation after that. And in that philosophy, I think the spirit of partnership becomes very important, because the challenges that we have can't be resolved by us alone or by a few organizations or foundations. So it's something we need to do it together collectively. And there is a very important role that the government also has in all this. So if we can collaborate with government, we can do that on a sustained basis. And as was said a little earlier also, leadership makes a big difference. So if we can have a leadership pipeline which we can groom, which can take this baton and hand it over to the next generation, it will make a big difference. And that's what has been created by 4 friends who came together in 1942, and even after 82 years, we are seeing what has been created in Asian Paints.
Yep, correct. Next question is to you, Aparna. You have a big responsibility of maintaining, just to put it very lightly, maintaining the reputation of such an important philanthropic organization, Tata Trust. Now, we put out a list a couple of years back, which is who are the global philanthropist of the century. And the founding Father Tata is tops the list, above anyone else. But that's a very proud thing for us as well. Now, how do you see this principle reflected in the current strategies and initiatives of Tata Trust?
No, thank you, Junaid. I'm also very humbled, first of all, to be on this stage with so many of you here, and a room full of philanthropists and people like me who are professionals within the philanthropy space. We're not philanthropists ourselves. We don't have personal wealth to give away, so we have a double responsibility. As you were saying, you have the trusteeship of what one inherits, and professionals like ourselves have, we have to carry that trusteeship with an additional degree of care. And so it is quite humbling to be, leading programs for a legacy philanthropy like the Tata Trusts. And I think it's important to put it in the global context that when Jamshedji Tata began his philanthropy, if we think about philanthropy at the global level, in terms of how it's emerging as a sector, as, a professional space within which to function, it really, the history sort of goes back, like everything in the world, to sort of a moment that happened in the West, right? When Andrew Carnegie wrote The Gospel of Wealth. And Jamshedji Tata actually began his philanthropy in the same decade. And this was at a time when the country wasn't even independent. We weren't even an independent nation, and the trusts were incorporated at that time. And I think there are 2 or 3 different things that I think really continue to flow through that inspiration. One, of course, is the fact that, once wealth is created, it flows intergenerationally. And it flows intergenerationally most effectively if it is entrusted into philanthropic initiatives. And I think that's a principle, because the Tata Trusts are an amalgamation of nearly 19 trusts. So and I think that's another very important thing to remember, that it is one man who started it, but every member of the family that came afterwards also had a different dream. So the trusts are an amalgamation of many people's dreams, generations of dreams and generations of those who've carried on that trusteeship. And of course, the third thing is that the deep investment in nation building and institution building that Jamshedji Tata believed in, along with giving individually, the trusts continue after these 130 years to also give individual grants, both for medical help as well as promoting education. So all of that has had continuity. While we adapt and do more contemporary forms of strategic philanthropy, the fundamental principles really continue. And I think that's something that us as professionals who come in have to always try to find that balance and ensure that those values are kept up. Thank you.
I think, Tapan, next question is to you. Your father is here. You've come from Madhya Pradesh today morning, Indore from today morning, right? I think in an interview with Hurun, I think we had interviewed your father a couple of years back, and he said, Mr. Vinod Agarwalji said he has a strong desire to be remembered as a philanthropist and as a good human being. You know, he's creating valuable business, but that's what he would like to be remembered as. And he's handing over, even when he hands over responsibilities to you over the years to come. As you prepare to lead, how do you plan to balance a legacy of the entrepreneurial success with the deep commitment that your father values?
Thank you very much, Anas, for giving me this opportunity. I come up from a family wherein success in giving back to the society is given more pride than entrepreneurial success. So 8 years ago, when I completed my graduation, I became an engineer and joined work. My first set of responsibilities included handling the South African coal operation and building the Chameli Devi Agarwal Blood Bank and Medical Center. So this balance has been for me since the get-go. And today also, I'm spearheading the real estate vertical also for my company. My entire real estate team is strongly working on building various projects throughout the country. So we come from a family wherein our dinner table conversations are about the initiatives that we have done. And my father takes serious pride in it. We very rarely talk about bottom lines, etc. That's not the communication we happen, but he's always eagerly looking ahead to the next project that he is going to do and what kind of an impact that is going to have. So this balance is sort of structurally innate in the way we work in our company, and I honestly don't have to work a lot towards it.
Next question is to you, Dr. Rahul. Same, you know, it's about legacy, and your father is here as well, Dr. Varke. How has his vision and values influenced your approach to philanthropy and CSR within the company?
So thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. So the whole purpose of my father's business, the way he started it, was a mission as a service to the nation by making these products which were not available back in the 70s. Coming from a very modest background, as a son of a Varkari, which is a spiritual leader in the community, giving back to the society was always there as a part of the family. And he felt that this ethos should be there. So once when he started this mission of making India self-reliant in biosciences, and which gave birth to many more things later on, he said that we should always work in a way where the society is benefited, there should be no differentiation, and that is where it started. Today, we are looking at much more technology-based philanthropy as we go ahead.
Okay. Next is to you, Jalaj. I think you're Vita is here as well. You and Vita have been described as proponents of constructive philanthropy. How do you ensure that initiatives you support are empowering individuals and creating dependency? And I also have one follow-on question to that. Do you also, when you enter a philanthropic initiative, do you also measure an exit in terms of objectives achieved and so on?
It's important that any social initiative is sustainable and is also inclusive. But it's also equally important that we handhold as long as it's required, because the CSR focus is more on monitoring and evaluation. And sometimes short-termism creeps in. Family foundations or philanthropy initiatives by trusts, which can be more medium to long-term in nature, can emphasize a lot more on capacity building. At the same time, you have to balance out, as you rightly said, that you have to step back after a while and wean off the funding, because otherwise they will not look for other means of funding. It's not very easy to do that, but that's a balancing act. That's the responsibility all of us have. To have patience for the long term, but be focused on outcomes in the short term.
Okay. Next, Aparna, could you discuss the importance of collaboration with other organizations in achieving your trust objective? How do you choose the right partners and ensure these collaborations are effective?
Thank you for that question. See, I think historically there was a very long time when trusts were, sort of the lone large philanthropy in the country. But we also know that in the last couple of decades, that scene has completely changed, right? We now have a much larger pool of philanthropic funding. But also the problems that we're trying to deal with at a global scale, things like climate change, et cetera, are becoming intractable and difficult to work singularly. And I'm focusing on that because it is now sort of the issue of the era, right? And it's the issue that really cannot be solved on our own. While it's true that issues around livelihoods and healthcare and education continue to be, immediate needs, I think there is a role for philanthropy to think about sort of the longer term issues as well, especially as you were saying, family philanthropies which have the greater patient risk capital. And I think collaborations from the perspective of the trusts have the ability to be the anchor funders and the core funders. And that's the role that they've really tried to capitalize on. And 2 or 3 very quick examples that I can give you is, for example, the seeding of the India Climate Collaborative, and anchor funding of institutions like the Institute of Genetic and Society, setting up of the India Health Fund, where you're actually creating a platform for others to be able to collaborate with. So that's been one key pathway for the trusts is, can you be the core funder, the anchor funder, so that others can then, find a platform to sort of grow that work. And I think that's something quite unique that the trusts have been able to do. But moving forward, there are 2, 3 different approaches we're doing. One is we're becoming very clear about our strategic frameworks, and we're hoping to really share them more broadly and publicly so that other philanthropies become aware of, what is the trust strategy moving forward? What are the problems that we're trying to solve for? And I think very often we tend to be closed off as individual philanthropies where we're working to solve our own problems. I think more conversation and being open about strategic framework. The second piece is I'm picking up on measurement, right? How do you develop? So we're also working on developing shared results frameworks around the issues that we're trying to solve for. So that also creates an invitation to say that, okay, we agree with how you want to measure this. Because very often collaboration falls apart because you haven't agreed on the impact that you want to create. And I think fundamental to the principle of collaboration is that you have to have shared values and vision. So really digging deep into whether the values on which you are going to do your grant making, on how you diagnose the particular issue, how you see principles of inclusivity. I think that's very fundamental and not to be forgotten. Thank you.
Jalaj, I want to ask you the next question. I think you are part of a lot of beyond Dani Foundation, you're also a part of the leadership of Reliance Foundation, Pyramid Foundation, and quite a few others as well. There's a list of places you're active in. I just wanted to ask you one question. What is the, how do you define philanthropy? Is it more beyond just capital? Is it also the time being spent? It's also kind of extending from the collaboration point that I asked Aparna. How do you manage all these things together? Because everybody will have different kinds of objectives. How do you use that effectively? I mean, that responsibility.
No, just to build on what Aparna said, I think there is a risk capital or innovation and trying out new models that are required. And that can only be done by patient family philanthropy. And I think that's something we have to keep in mind as we embark on our journey. Because many more donors will come in once a model is established. If you go to a new geography, you have a new idea, you want to embrace a new technology. But the initial capital, which is where the risk-taking and innovation happens, and that's equally important in the social space as we see it is in the corporate world. And that's something that needs to be done. And to talk about collaboration, you are absolutely right. The challenges that we have in front of us are big. And somewhere convergence needs to happen, whether it's government, whether it's social organizations, whether it's technology as an enabler. And more like-minded people come together, then only the magic will happen. People have their areas of passion, where they want to write checks, where they want to spend time. What you are pointing out is also absolutely correct, because sometimes it's easy to write check, at least for people in this room, but it's more difficult to spend time to give their professional inputs, to give their time as an advisor to an upcoming social entrepreneur. Because the journey you have gone through as an entrepreneur in the corporate space, many of those things are equally relevant when you move in the social space. And if people can do that, that can make a more lasting and a sustainable change as far as these things are concerned. And that's where collaboration becomes even more important as we move ahead. And as far as social space is concerned, there is no competition. I think whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's environment, whether it's sports, and many other areas where we want to work together. But before I end, I think all of us in the room should give a round of applause both to Hurun and to EdelGive. Because I think it's platforms like this where people come together and the exchange of ideas happen, and all of us learn from each other, all of us inspire each other, because there are so many wonderful stories in this room itself, and that needs to be done, and that needs to be propagated. And that's what I think both these organizations are doing tirelessly. So kudos to both the organizations.
Thank you very much. Very
Thank
kind
you.
of you. I was in discussion with Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan a couple of months back, Dinesh's co-founder, and he said a beautiful thing, which is basically he kind of supports initiatives that might take a lot of time, even beyond his generation, to see results, like in research, right? And sometimes to get capital for such initiatives is difficult from a philanthropy standpoint. So my question is to Tapan and Dr. Rahul. Do you have debates with your father or in terms of the causes for philanthropy? Now, you might come back and say, oh, I want to do climate change. But your father, no, let's support the school nearby. Have you had discussions like that? And have you seen an evolution there in terms of your dinner table chats? I think you do speak a lot on the dinner table, you just said now.
So definitely there is disparity when it comes. Sorry. Definitely there is disparity when it comes to opinions in terms of the kind of projects and initiatives that we
Who
want
wins?
to take. So obviously majority of the times it is him. But I think one big change that we have been able to bring about is that we have been able to diversify and maximize the reach of our initiatives. So initially we were concentrating it in one area of the country, then we brought it back home, and now we are spreading it across the country. So that is one thing that I really wanted to push on, and that is something that we've been successful on.
You?
So I have a different approach towards philanthropy, and what our country needs right now is technology. And
Different approach compared to your father's, or
yes.
okay.
So the typical philanthropy which has been going on in the family and in the business is taking care of handicapped children and autistic center and all that we've been doing. But we now are we all technical guys in the family. We feel that new technology needs to be developed. So for example, we are working on a platform which is a soil testing machine. So can you imagine the agriculture being a big part of our society? And the government is spending a lot of money on fertilizer subsidy. So we just developed a small machine which just gives you the soil health of that particular soil, where the government doesn't have to give any more subsidy. Just a small amount of fertilizer needs to be used. And the health card is issued by the government itself. So we keep pushing that let's do some philanthropy and give away a few thousand machines to the farmers, run a few processes, and then we say, well, so do you understand? I mean, this is where we kind of always are headloggers with each other.
Who wins, dad or?
Dad and me and my brother.
No, but just to build on this immediate versus long term, in the area of sports where you know we do some work, there is always this question whether you support or promote an existing athlete who can go further versus whether you invest in a coach who over the next 10 or 20 years can actually produce 100 champions versus supporting one champion today. And that becomes important. And again, the role of technology comes in, where how much of that can you do in the virtual space and how much you need to do in the physical space, and how do you combine the two? Because technology can, especially in the Indian context, go a long way. Or you take the example of ChatGPT, where if you punch in today and say that there is a 55-year-old male who's losing weight, most of the time, if you ask for symptoms, TB will not show up, because the data has still not been fed in on the Indian male and the challenges around it. So in many of these areas, I think India can actually lead the way as far as these things are concerned.
Would you like to add anything, Aparna? You can add too after this.
I don't come from an intergenerational philanthropy, but I think just picking up on the piece on the time scale. You know, in philanthropy, we've been talking a lot about the challenge of both scale and sustainability, right? And scale is something that all of us are obsessed with because the problems we want to solve for are huge, and therefore we say we build a model, we'll replicate, and we're going to scale it. So if I'm doing this well in 10 villages, can I do it in 100? Can I do it in 1,000? But very often what we forget is that scale is something that's also related to time. Scale is not just it's not just spatial, it's also temporal, right? And we also have to think about across time scale, not just in terms of how many geographies, how many people. And I think that's where the biggest power of intergenerational philanthropy is. You can actually imagine scale across time. And not just scale in terms of the numbers that you can grow. So my submission would be that, you know, can we now start to think about scale, not just across numbers and space and geography, but across time. And I think that would make for great dinner conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
So it's a very, I mean, it's an apt point. Scale is very important, but at the same time, it should be affordable. So let's say now, just now in the last few months, people have come up that Casper, which is a technology which can cure sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a big problem in India. It's like every tribal part, right from Kashmir to Tamil Nadu, has a tribal population suffering from sickle cell anemia. And can we afford CRISPR for each and every individual? So this is where India should rise up, and companies should come forward and sponsor and for no profit do research and try to scale this treatment therapeutic applications to everybody. For example, we are working with this center in IIT Mumbai, and there we have developed some, the scientists there have brought down the CAR T cell technology, which costs around $2 million in the US, has brought it below ₹1 crore for India. So which is something which is scalable. So this is very important. And as I said, the government has money, there are good people, there are institutions to execute the funds, but we need proper channels, we need people, we need to educate the farmers, the healthcare professionals, that what is available and what works. That's my take.
Cool. I think we'll